This is an analysis from Alpha Business Media. Today, we're diving into Nepal's tourism sector. Now, this is a cornerstone of their economy, and it's facing a really pivotal moment. So we're asking a big question for 2025. Is the industry in the middle of a genuine renaissance, or is it heading for a long-term stagnation?
To get a sense of just how high the stakes are, just look at the numbers. Tourism can contribute up to 6.7% of the entire nation's GDP. And that's not just a number on a spreadsheet. It supports the livelihoods of over 380,000 people. So you can see how the health of this one sector is a pretty direct signal of the country's broader economic well-being.
So let's start by looking at this crossroad Nepal's tourism sector finds itself at, where we'll examine both the huge opportunities and the tough internal challenges that are really testing the industry's foundations.
First up, let's explore the case for a renaissance. We'll start with some really encouraging data and the strategic moves that are fueling a lot of this optimism.
Okay, the data here tells a really interesting story. After a pretty slow start to the year, look what happened in April. A massive record-breaking spike to over 116,000 visitors. Now, that's not just a good month, that's the highest number for April in Nepal's entire history. And that momentum kept rolling right into May. So, the obvious question is, what on earth drove this surge?
Well, it turns out it wasn't a coincidence at all. This surge happened right after a major upgrade at the main international airport in Kathmandu was finally finished. That project had forced the airport to operate on reduced hours, creating a huge bottleneck. The moment that bottleneck was gone, all that pent-up demand was released. It's a perfect illustration of the direct line between infrastructure and growth.
And it's not just about that one airport. The government is also really stepping up. They're rolling out modern policies, like a new visa aimed at digital nomads, to bring in those high-value long-term visitors. They're giving tax breaks to hotels and launching huge promotional campaigns. It's all part of a bigger push to send a clear signal that Nepal is absolutely open for business.
And here's where things get really interesting. Nepal's core offerings, what it's famous for, are almost perfectly aligned with what travelers around the world are looking for right now. You've got this rising demand for adventure, for deep cultural experiences, and for sustainable travel. Nepal has all of that in spades, which is a massive market opportunity. Okay, so that's the good news. But, and this is a big but, those record numbers we just saw, they might be hiding some pretty fundamental weaknesses that could threaten this whole recovery. Let's look at the case for stagnation.
So, this is probably the most critical point to understand. While the overall arrival numbers look fantastic, if you dig just a little deeper, you find a really serious problem. Arrivals from Nepal's two biggest, most important markets, India and China, are actually flat or even declining. You've got safety concerns and high costs turning away some Indian tourists, and a slow economy at home holding back the Chinese. Relying on other countries to fill that gap? Well, that's a very risky strategy.
And remember that airport upgrade we talked about? Well, that's not the whole story either. The bigger picture is actually pretty troubling. You see, Nepal poured hundreds of millions of dollars into two brand new international airports to take the pressure off Kathmandu. But look at this. They're massively underutilized. International flights at one have been completely suspended. The other has seen just a handful of charter flights and is bogged down by reports of corruption. So what you have are these beautiful, modern, and largely empty airports. On top of that, there's another major headache on the international stage. Nepal was recently put back on what's called the FATF gray list. Think of it as a red flag for the global financial community. It's a label for countries that aren't doing enough to fight financial crime. And it hurts. It damages the country's reputation, it scares away the foreign investment you need for new hotels, and it makes financial transactions more complicated for everyone, including tourists.
And finally, you have the chronic, day-to-day challenges that have been around for a while. You might fly into a modern airport, but chances are you'll soon be traveling on crumbling roads. High taxes make flying within the country pretty expensive. The air pollution in major cities is a serious deterrent. And of course, there's the ever-present risk of political instability, which just creates an unpredictable environment for travelers.
All right, so we've laid out both sides of the coin. A story of record arrivals on one hand and deep structural flaws on the other. Now, let's bring it all together and deliver a final assessment. Which brings us right back to our original question.
After weighing all the evidence, which is it? A true renaissance for Nepal's tourism industry or a future of stagnation?
According to the analysis, the verdict is this: a renaissance with serious reservations. What does that mean? It means the positive signs are absolutely real. You can't dismiss them. There is genuine momentum. However, and it's a huge however, that momentum is incredibly fragile. The underlying problems are so significant that they could easily derail this whole recovery if they're not tackled head-on.
So, what's the path forward? Well, the analysis lays out a pretty clear 5-point playbook. First, they've got to create targeted campaigns to win back those crucial Indian and Chinese markets. Second, they need an actual strategy to get airlines to use those 2 new airports. Third, fixing the roads has to become a national priority. Fourth, they need to look at their taxes to become more affordable. And finally, they have to do whatever it takes to get off that FATF gray list and restore international confidence.
Look, the potential for a golden age of tourism in Nepal is undeniable. The country has a world-class product that modern travelers are desperate for. But potential doesn't pay the bills. The ultimate question is one of execution. Can Nepal's leaders and its industry actually act on this strategy and turn a fragile recovery into lasting, sustainable success? The answer to that question is going to define the country's economic future for years to come.
This has been an analysis from Alpha Business Media.